The member for Fadden.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Benjamin Disraeli said that the legacy of heroes is the memory of a great name and the inheritance of a great example. Sergeant Till is indeed a great example to all Australians, and it's with great pride mixed with enormous sadness that I rise to honour this fallen warrior. Sergeant Brett Till was recently farewelled by fellow diggers in Tarin Kowt, southern Afghanistan. He became the 10th young Anzac, the 10th young soldier, the 10th young warrior killed in a foreign battlefield called Afghanistan while trying to defuse an improvised explosive device. This 31-year-old was the 4th Australian to die from an IED blast in Afghanistan. The cortege of vehicles, including one carrying Sergeant Till's flag-draped casket, passed along a route lined by his Australian colleagues and representatives from coalition forces in Oruzgan. 8 of his mates then carried his casket into an awaiting RAF C-130 Hercules, which then brought this brave warrior home. He was serving with the Special Operations Task Group. His commanding officer said that his death was not in vain. Without question, Brett's work on the day he died saved the lives of his mates, the CO said. He was a man who, with his team, would deliberately place himself between dangerous and unstable high-explosive devices and the soldiers of the Special Operations Task Group on a daily basis in order to ensure that they could carry out their important mission to make this country, Afghanistan, a safer place. Brett will be forever remembered, both here and at home, as a bloke that made a difference and saved lives. Sergeant Till's widow, Bree Till, paid tribute to her husband. She said, "Brett was such a beautiful man. His smile would crack the frowns of 100 faces." Mates of Australian soldiers bid farewell to a friend and colleague during that solemn ramp ceremony in Tarin Kowt on Saturday, the 21st of March. Sergeant Till from the Sydney-based Incident Response Regiment was serving with the Special Operations Task Group, led by engineers from the Mentoring and Construction Task Group and accompanied by Special Operations Task Group colleagues. He was farewelled. The 10th Australian soldier, killed in a foreign battlefield, an explosive ordnance disposal technician, a man whose job was to place himself in harm's way to protect those who couldn't protect themselves from the foulest of devices, that of improvised explosions. He lived in Sydney. He was 31, with his beautiful wife and 2 children. Sergeant Till enlisted in the Australian Army in 2001 by way of background. He was posted to the Corps of Royal Australian Engineers following recruit training. He trained as a combat engineer and served with a number of units, including the 1st Combat Engineering Regiment and the School of Military Engineering. Defence Force Head Air Chief Marshal Angus Houston paid tribute to Sergeant Till and his extraordinary bravery. He said Sergeant Till's selfless act to protect his mates and innocent civilians is a mark of the character of the man. My thoughts and prayers are with Sergeant Till's loved ones at this difficult time. His sacrifice will never be forgotten. This was a soldier that went to fight for freedoms we enjoy and take for granted. When I deployed in operations with a 21-year-old wife, I had no children. I can't imagine what it's like kissing small children goodbye and going to a foreign theatre of operations. But this is what Sergeant Till and thousands of young Australians like him do every day, every week, every month, to protect and preserve freedom in our name. Sergeant Till paid the ultimate sacrifice in defending what we love and believe in, freedom. It's attributed to George Orwell that we sleep safe in our beds because rough men stand ready in the night to visit violence on those who would do us harm. Sergeant Till was one of those rough men, those young Australians, those young Anzacs, those warriors, who stood ready 24 hours of the day to protect us and preserve our freedom. He knew that if freedom is indeed the sure possession of those alone with the courage to defend it, then Sergeant Till indeed stands tall in our nation's history. As I've said previously in this House, in the great tradition of an ancient warrior, statesman and king, Pericles, who founded the Athenian Empire 2,500 years ago and led that nation during the first 2 years of the Peloponnesian War, Pericles said, "What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others." Sergeant Till spent his time on a foreign battlefield protecting his mates, in a highly charged environment, doing a difficult job, working with improvised explosive devices. How many lives this brave man has saved may never be counted, but his heroism will never be forgotten. His kids will remember him. They'll honour his sacrifice, as this nation does. They'll march every Anzac Day with his medals. And they'll be remembered as they remember their father. This nation, this parliament is very proud of Sergeant Till. We're very proud of all our young warriors who serve us so faithfully overseas, and surely we'll never forget.